Hey there, it's Lenny McGill with GlockStore Performance and Custom Shop here in the awesome Nashville studios today. We're going to talk about the new, relatively new, Ruger RXM. Ruger and Magpul have collaborated to produce this handgun. Ruger, of course, in the firearms business for about 100 years, done the upper and the engineering, and Magpul, of course, in the plastics injection molded business, has done the frame and the magazines as well. Now, you're going to ask yourself, well, hey, this is the GlockStore channel. Why are you talking about this? It's because the RXM takes Glock Gen3 parts, many of the Glock Gen3 parts, including magazines, okay, and including the slide lock and the slide stop, and a lot of the internals in the upper. In fact, all the internals in the upper are basically Gen3 clones of a Glock 19, all right? The frame is unique, and what's really unique about it is that it features what they call the FCI, Fire Control Insert, similar to SIG's FCU, Fire Control Unit. Now, that said, it's a pretty neat gun and a pretty neat thing that they've done here, and I want to go ahead and show you some of the disassembly, reassembly. And what's really fascinating, because that FCI is removable, is once you remove it from the frame, basically, the frame is just a piece of plastic. The FCI is the actual firearm itself. It's actually serialized right on the side here. And what's really cool about it is a lot of companies are starting to make aftermarket frames that you can customize and build onto this firearm itself. Here's a couple that are really cool. These are aluminum frames from Sharps Brothers. This one's really cool because it has the 1911 style grip insert panels that can be changed and customized. Okay, they're pretty cool. Okay, but it's an aluminum frame. There's another aluminum frame from Icarus, which is a little bit more aggressive, very aggressive texturing, but it accepts the FCI and the upper as well, of course. So we'll talk about those in just a little bit. Of course, Magpul also has replacement frames too. Okay, now again, you got to wrap your head around the fact that the frame is not the firearm, but the FCI is the firearm. And this is available in different colors. This, of course, being FDE. There's going to be a gray, as we see right here, and then there's also an OD green, and then, of course, black is available. So that's pretty unique and pretty cool, and something that I wanted to make sure you're aware of. Now, this gun itself, as it comes from the factory, has suppressor height sights and a rather unique system for mounting an optic. I've already taken the screws off of the cover plate, but you'll see they send a little baggie with some posts, and these posts allow you to install different optics, very popular optics like Trijicon RMR and Hullison C-type optics, that will fit directly into the firearm without the use of an adapter plate, which is pretty cool. Okay, so they really have thought about a lot of different things here. It feels good. I've got my dead weight trigger weight here, and out of the factory, out of the box, the trigger is like 4.5, maybe 5 pounds at the most, but it really feels good. So the dead weight trigger weight, basically is just that. There's a 2-pound weight on the bottom. There's 3, there's 4, and here's 4.5. Okay, so now I can game this a little bit, but I'm going to try to be very fair and very realistic. I'm going to put the bar against the trigger guard there, okay, as you would be pulling the trigger on the very bottom part for the best fulcrum action. If I put it more in the middle, it's going to be a little heavier, but I'm going to take it all the way down to the bottom there, and I'm going to just rub that bar along the frame of the bottom of the trigger guard there, and that'll be my point, and there's 4.5, okay? So now, here, same position, here's 4. Okay, so it's not really going there. Now here's 4.25, and it's going to be right in this ballpark here. And maybe just a little wiggle. So there's your 4.25 pound factory trigger, which is pretty impressive. All right, and that's what I was playing with it a little bit, and I was feeling the trigger. I'm thinking, wow, that feels pretty good. It's got the safe action trigger concept, just like Glock introduced 35 years ago. It comes apart just like a Glock, and we're going to go ahead and do the disassembly real quick and get into that FCI. Again, wrap your hand up around the top of the slide here. Grab the slide lock Okay, pull down on both sides, hold down. As you hold it down, you walk it off the frame, just like that. Boom. There's the upper. If you look in the bottom here, everything is Glock Gen3 19. Guide rod, barrel, safety plunger, striker, slide cover plate. It's basically a Glock 19, same exact mechanism. All right, we're going to pop that off the side here. And now the FCI, you can see it's serialized right here. And if you look inside, you'll see that it basically has a locking block built into it that's attached to it. It is replaceable. And then, of course, it has this entire horseshoe shape that is called the FCI. It includes the trigger, which is a Glock trigger, basically. The trigger housing is different, but all the mechanisms inside are the same as far as the trigger spring and the way the trigger interacts with it. And there is a connector there. So we're going to go ahead and take it apart. Now, when you think about taking it apart, you're going to want to look at the different capture points. What captures this FCI into the frame? And there's really 3 points. The large pin, which I'll just call a large pin because I don't know the nomenclature if they call that a locking block pin or not, but that's the large pin. There's a small pin, which would be more like a locking block pin in my mind. And then the actual slide lock itself captures the FCI as well. So we got to remove all 3 of those pieces before we actually take the FCI out of the frame. To do so, we're going to go ahead and take our frame, pop it on top of my little Armorer's tape block there, and I'm going to take a punch, a rather large punch here, pop it right on top of that large pin, and just drive that out with the steel tip on this hammer. And here we go. And it gets out to about there, and then this piece is captured by a spring that's in the frame already, and it comes out better if you twist it and turn it and kind of defeat that spring pressure. I like to use a pair of needle nose pliers for this particular part because it is kind of tough. And let's see if I can get a good grip on it and actually pull it out here, just like that. It does want to turn, so it's not going to come out straight. You got to turn it a little bit, half tuck, and then it's going to come out a little bit better. So there's what I call the large pin. You'll notice it's got some cutouts on it that actually interface with that spring as well. That spring pressure is what captures it into the frame so it doesn't vibrate out while you're shooting. Okay, there's a small pin. Now just take a smaller punch, get on top of it, and it comes out a little bit easier. It is tight from the very beginning. I've done this a couple times already, so it's going to be a little bit looser, but when you get it, it's tight. And it's still tight. And it's tight enough for me to come back here with that pair of needle nose pliers and pry it out again, because otherwise you got to have very strong hands. And there's what I call the skinny pin. Okay, now like I said, you got to take the slide lock out in order to get to that FCI. Now the slide lock is captured by a leaf spring the same way as a Glock Gen3. Take a small punch, we're going to depress that spring, and that'll allow this slide lock to just fall right out. So once I get in top there and I really depress that spring manually, it should just come out. And it started. I need to depress it a little bit more. Come on, baby. You're out here. You're halfway out. I can see you. There we go. Just need a little bit of coaxing. That being the slide lock. All right. So I've taken all the pins out. And there is this FCI that's kind of stuck in the frame still because it's captured in the tail of the frame. There's a little notch back there. So it's not going to come out from the back at all, okay? What I need to do is grab a punch and grab that big bar there and just try to lift it up a little bit, get it started. All right, see it came out there like that? So now that it's out halfway, I'm going to go ahead and just pull it all the rest of the way out. And then, like I said, it's captured in the back here, so I'm going to just pull it straight forward. And there it comes. Now, careful, the little leaf spring for that slide lock did pop out because it's not very well captured in the frame. Okay, that's the frame. You can buy replacements. Boom. And that's one of the cool things about this entire piece is that these are so interchangeable. You can have a lot of fun building this gun up and making it really custom to you. What I'm going to do now is just talk a little bit about this FCI. Again, it is the serialized part. And this is, you know, kind of the new wave of firearms manufacturing. But what's really interesting is that all the parts in here are basically Gen 3 Glock parts. The trigger bar is basically the same mechanism back here. There's a connector right here in the trigger housing, but the trigger housing is different. It's not the same as a Glock trigger housing, but the ejector is the same. Like I said, the slide stop is the same. The trigger shoe, you know, very similar to Glock, a little different shape. But basically, any Glock Gen 3 triggers will fit into here. To access this, you'd want to take this little trigger pin out, right? And then when you take the trigger pin out, you can lift this locking block part off, boom. And then the wings of this FCI will spread open, and you'll have access to that trigger housing and the connector and the trigger bar and all that stuff. So that's kind of how that works. And then you put it back together, and you'll see that there's, you know, little posts over here that intersect with that trigger housing. And that's what captures the trigger housing into the FCI. Okay, so now let's go ahead and reassemble this into one of our aftermarket frames. And because this one is so unique and different, I think I'll try the Sharps Brothers with the panels, the grip panels. And the only thing I'm going to mention to you is that the spring that's inside the frame, it's kind of hard to see right here. Okay, that spring is not included in these aluminum frames. Magpul does include that spring with their frames. So you'll have to remove this spring and pop it in here. Now, for this demonstration, it's not necessary in the sense that, you know, I'm kind of putting it together. And it will work and function that way, but it won't have that spring pressure that would keep that big pin from walking itself out. So if you're going to reassemble, you're going to want to put that spring in here, and there's two holes in there where it captures that spring, and it does give that spring pressure to that piece right there. All right, let's go ahead and reassemble this now. This is the FCI fire control insert, the serialized part. It's going to hook in the back. If you get your finger up in there, you're going to feel there's a little ledge there that's going to capture the back of this piece right here like that. Now, the problem with this right now, if I put this in right now, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult to actually install this slide lock spring. Again, remember, that's the spring that captures that slide lock. It's a little leaf spring. The small leg goes into the rear. There's almost a little notch there. It's not like Glock where it has a full slot. There's just a little notch in the back there. So I want to get this positioned properly, and I probably don't have as much finger room as I do without that FCI in place, so I'm going to do it before and get it placed right there. And it kind of just lays in place right there like that. But it does have this spring pressure that I need to capture the slide lock. And there it is. Again, it's probably easier to put it in first. If you have small fingers, you can do it after you put the FCI in place, but I'm going to capture that FCI in that little hook back there. Got to squeeze it together to make it fit. Okay. And again, that's one of the neat things about this. It is, you know, a part that can be, you got to push it together a little bit and push it down to make everything fit. And now it looks like the holes are lining up, and I'm good. Okay. I think the first thing I'm going to try to do is put in the actual big pin. And then I'll do the slide lock, and then I'll do the small pin. How's that? Big pin starts on the small side, in a sense, or the big side, because I'm going to drive it in with the big head as the last part. So if you'll notice in there, you can see that I've got to push down. There's a little bit of pressure. Got to push down to make those holes line up. And as I push down, then I got to find a spot for this thing to get started. And I think I got it right here. There you go. So I got it started. You can see the position I'm starting. Eventually, it's going to rotate that head up there. I'm going to take the nylon tip of my hammer and get it started. Now, I've got it halfway in, but remember, it's got to marry up to that hole on the other side, so I got to keep the pressure in there so these holes line up. And so this thing goes right into where it's supposed to go. And hopefully, I think I found it. Yeah. Okay. So I got that flush. I'm going to caution you to keep a finger on top of that little slide lock spring so it doesn't pop out, because they don't really stick in there well. So I'll go ahead now, put in the actual slide lock so I can capture that spring as well. And to do so, we're going to kind of go in at an angle. I'll get in there with a small punch and push that spring down. So now, here we go. Take my little punch, push that pin down, that spring down, get up on top of it, and there we go. And make sure it's in there all the way. And that's what I'm looking for right there. So I want to have that spring pressure. Okay, now the skinny pin, or the small pin, coming in from this side, using a nylon tip. There we go. So now we're going to go take our slide and pop it onto this frame. The slide looks like it's ready to go, and here we go. Looks like it works. Now, of course, on this frame, we'd have to install a magazine button. This is a Gen 3 magazine button. And I do want to show you that the Icarus, by chance, what they've done is they've added the actual Gen 4 button on their frame, which is pretty smart because it is ambidextrous. So that said, that is the disassembly and then reassembly of the actual FCI into a new frame. This Ruger is, pretty cool. It's what I really like about it is the fact that it's got these different frames, and this aluminum frame feels pretty good. Overall, the cool thing about this is that it accepts Glock parts, and we are the GlockStore, and so we've got all the parts that you can digest into this gun. So we are the GlockStore here in Nashville, Tennessee. If you are ever in Nashville, we invite you to come by, check out the facility. The range is unique because we shoot in multiple directions in combat, or should I say shoot rooms. When you're in Nashville, please drop by, ask for me, I'll come out and shake your hand. We'd love to see you. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time.